My name's Jim Carr, and today we're going to talk about how to make copper items, spoons, ladles, and different items on a swedge block. A swedge block is mainly a piece of iron that weighs 75 pounds, just a big chunk of iron. It's got different cutouts in it or different dips in it. It's got a ladle, a large ladle, a smaller ladle, and a smaller ladle, plus a spoon. And on the sides, it's got a bunch of divots where you can make curves or contours on whatever you're making, or you can make pickaxe handles, or it just depends on what you're trying to make. On the back side, it's got the picture of a fireplace shovel, and it's also got a soup or a dessert ladle. Okay, on the other end of it, it's got some more divots where you got a good selection of, like if you want to contour something, you're able to do it. If you want to do an outside contour, you're able to do it. So it's really a pretty good thing. And these things have been around since the early 1800s, and years ago they used them to make their bowls and cooking utensils with. Okay, so today though, just so we can go ahead and get started, I'm going to attempt to show you how to make a small soup ladle. And with that, we're going to make it out of a piece of copper. And the copper is probably 24, 22, 24 gauge. And we're going to try to keep this as simple as possible, and there's nothing hard about it. It's just, it's like everything else. Everything has a learning curve. We're going to take this piece of copper, and we have to cut it just slightly bigger than the divot that we're going to hammer it into. And normally whenever I do things, I use a ball peen hammer. And a lot of people use what they call the can't think now. They use what's called it's a different style hammer that has a longer bill on it, where you can get down the divots more. But I can use the ball peen hammer, and I can get a pretty good job with it, and it does a pretty good job, and I'm happy with it. So when it's good enough, it's good enough. There's no reason to change and go pay $100 for something where you can find one swap meet for $1 and it'll do you just the same job. Okay, so I'll go ahead and fasten this on here. There's two ways you can do it. You can hold this thing and it'll work, but normally what I do is I figure out where the size I need, and then I take my pin snips here, where have I done with it? Take my pin snips, then I cut the size and make it just slightly bigger than the divot you're going to be hammering into. Okay, and then from there, rather than trying to hold it, and then as you cut stuff, normally because you're putting pressure on it, it warps a little bit. So what I do is put it on the swedge block and just kind of flatten it out. And then you have to be really careful about the edges, because as you cut stuff, especially if you use different type of shears, it'll leave a jagged edge on there. You don't want to leave jagged edge, because it'll cut you. Okay, and you want to be careful, because it's not about getting hurt, it's about trying to make a simple product. Now what I normally do is I take this C-clamp and I force it over the edge of this here block here, and I fasten it down. Now I can reach up there and hold that and do it without this C-clamp, but it just makes life a little bit simpler with the C-clamp, and I can keep my fingers out of the way, because I have hit my fingers before, and that's not good. Okay, so what I normally do is I hold this down and I start pecking on it. And as you peck on it, you're going to realize real quick where your actual opening is. And as you continue to peck on it, this copper, because it's really soft, it'll start going down into the divot. Okay, and normally you start around the outside and you work it down, and as you work it down, you'll figure out where your edge is. Now as we go through this, I'll have to take this off at least once, maybe twice, and trim around it, because if you leave it too long, when you start getting deep, well, the metal will have a tendency to want to fold up on itself, and which creates a problem for you later on. So once you make a couple of rounds in here, this metal will get what they call work hardened. because you're moving the metal. As you move the metal, it heats up. As the metal heats up and cools down, it becomes hard and it can become brittle. So after we work this a few strokes, and it takes several pecks to get this. You might do 250, 300 pecks to get this thing to start going down where you want it. And then you can normally tell while you're pecking on it how deep it's going, because the metal will change pitches. Now, pitch is a sound, and I don't know anything about music, but it's the different sounds of music, whether it's a high pitch or a low pitch. Well, the metal does the same thing. So as you're pecking on it, you can tell how deep you're getting based on the sound that you get from the metal itself. Okay, so it's starting to go down, and as it goes down, you may have to rotate it a little bit where you can get both sides equally. And you just keep checking on it like that, and it'll keep going down, and it'll get down to a point where it'll stop. Okay, and it won't go down anymore. And when that happens, you have two choices. You can either stop there, or you take it off and do what they call an annealing process. And that's where I just take a propane torch and heat it up, and then I quench it in water, let it get cold, and then it makes the metal go soft again. So then you can repeat the process, and you just keep hammering on it, and hammering on it, and hammering on it, and after a while you start wondering if you're making any headway, and you get to a point to where you're not. And you hammer on one side, and you can see the metal move, and then you hammer on the other side, you see it move the other way. That tells you right there that the metal's not stretching anymore. So you're at a point where you need to do something different. Okay? Now, if you're a person that likes smooth items, well, you're probably not going to get it from traditional made type items, because one of the purposes of it is you try to do it as simple as possible without machinery. Okay, so my goal today is to hammer this out and get it down to a level that I would be happy with, or a person that wanted to purchase it. Now I can go on to the point to where I can determine what size ladle this is and tell you it's a 1/2 a cup, or it's a cup, or it's a 2 cup. I can actually figure that out, and then that determines how deep I want to make this thing. Okay, but for the purpose of what we're doing here today, I'm just going to keep pecking on it here another couple minutes and get it drawn on down, and you can tell by the sound when I'm hitting solid metal there. Okay, well, I'm not hitting solid metal all the way around, so I'm going to rotate this thing back around this way again. I'm going to peck on it a little bit more, and you can tell by the sound of it that it's getting pretty solid. It's getting pretty solid. So now I'm going to pull it off. You trim it just past the outside edge where you still got some showing, but you're not so close that you have to worry about running out of metal as we take this on down. Okay, so I cut that piece off, and then it's getting kind of close there, so I work this right on around and take off the excess metal. Now they have different types of shears to do this with. I've got some circle shears over there that'll go right circle. I've got some that go left circle, but most generally whichever pair I pick up, that's normally what I do all the work with. Okay, so it normally works pretty good just doing it like this, and there again, if that's good enough, that's good enough. Okay, and then you have to remember, as you cut these pieces of metal off, you have to pick them up, because they will go through the bottom of your shoe. Now, as you can see, that's not really deep, but it's got a little bit of depth to it. But now I can put it back up on my block here, and I can get my hammer out, and it'll find its way home. It'll set back down in there like it was, and then you just start pecking on it again. Okay? And you got to remember, you can't continue to peck just in one place, because if you do, you're going to push it down to where it gets really thin, and then it'll break through. Okay, now I have on a couple of them. I have broke them all the way through, but you know, that's part of learning. It's like anything else. And you'll see if you pick that up and turn it, it's got a home. You just have to figure out where the home is, and it'll set down in there for you. Okay, now I can continue to take this on down, but I don't think I'm going to. I'm going to leave it about there, and then I'm going to bring it up here, and then see some of those bumps. I mean, they're not real bad, but I'm going to try to take a few of those out. And what I do is I made me a little tool here, which is actually a trailer ball hitch, and I can put that up on there, and I can start pecking on that, and it'll take most of those little bumps and bangs right on out there, and the more you want to work it, the smoother it'll get, you know, and you just keep going until you're happy with it. Okay, and you can work it. This is called planishing. Now they actually make planishing machines. Now you can see that's starting to smooth out a little bit. It's still got some in there, but I mean, I can work it as long as I want to, and I can get it as smooth as I want it, you know, and it's just a matter of how much time that I want to spend on it. And to me, it amazes me sometimes the work that you can get out of a piece of copper and how far it will actually stretch. Okay, you can take a piece of copper, and I mean, you can get it thin enough you can hold it up and see the light through it, you know, which is not the plan here, but it's just amazing how much it stretches sometimes. Now, with that thought in mind, since I'm this far along, I'm gonna go ahead and trim this back some more. Now, what I normally do is I take my pen here, because it gives me an eyesight of where I'm gonna cut it. Take my pen here, and because that's got a flat spot on it, if you follow that flat spot all the way around, it gives you a cut line, and you cut just outside that cut line. Okay, so I'll put that back up there, and then I'll bring this in here like this, and I'll just start trimming away at it, and just stay just outside that black line that I drew on there. And it'll just come right on around there as long as you just stay up real close to it and cut it like a little dish, and then I'll put it back down in here again, and like I say, it'll find its home. Then you can take on some more, and as you can tell by the sound, that's getting pretty solid. So we've about gone as far down as that thing's gonna go. Okay, now once you move it. Now, how do I know where the home is for it, where it actually sets the flattest? Because overusing this thing a few times, you kind of figure it out. Okay, and then once it's where it's supposed to go. Now, normally what I do is I put me a mark on here and put me a mark on here, and then as long as I line that mark up, it'll stay where it's supposed to stay. Okay, but then sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just work at it and I make it work. Okay, so now we're up to this point here, and we can actually take us a file, and I had a small one here. See, I was planning on getting home. Well, never mind. And then I take my file and I knock all these edges off of here, so there's not any sharp edges. And if you feel that, you can see, or you can hold it up and look at it and see if there's sharp edges on it. As you see me file, you see those little pieces falling off. Well, that's all little pieces of copper is coming off there that won't put a splinter in your hand later on. Okay, and you just kind of work your way all the way around, and then that makes it safe for you. And now I will probably do this 2 or 3 times before I finally finish quick work of it. See what I mean? But it doesn't do it any better than if you do it by hand. But it makes pretty quick work. You just start sanding on it, you get it cleaned up to whatever level you want to. Okay, and I do the inside, take it up to get the grit movement in it. And then I put me a couple drops of that down in there. Then take me a rag and start polishing it. Okay, and then you do that for a few minutes, then it starts turning all cloudy gray, milky color, which is the same as Osage orange. And they make terrific handles because they don't absorb water, and then I put a food grade sealant on it. Now flatten that out just like that. And then I remember which swedge block I used. Take this over to the drill press. You drill your hole down in there, and then you fix the handle to it.